Okay, hi there everybody. Oh, hi Natasha. How are you? Hi Christine. Thanks for joining me this afternoon. How are you? Hope you're all well. Hope everything's all good. Can you hear and see everything okay? I've got a few likes coming up there, so I'm assuming that you can hear me. Perhaps I'll just wait for the video to catch up on screen, just to let me know. Oh good, Natasha can hear me. Yes, I'm all good, thank you. Hi Dawn. Oh, thanks for that. We're all good, are we? Perfect. Okay, we're all nice and quiet here. Hope everybody's good. We'll just wait for a few more people to join us. We have the embossing folders here. Who enjoyed the shows with Lisa last, I think it was Friday, wasn't it? Well, a lot seems to have happened since last Friday. I've completely lost track of the days, but I wasn't able to watch these shows live at the time, so I've caught up with them over the weekend, and they were very good, as we'd come to expect from Lisa. And it's so great to see all the products being displayed, for one by Lisa of course because she's designed them, and two to actually see them on screen, and actually even though the shows are very fast paced, Lisa was able to show us the best of them, and the samples looked absolutely fabulous, didn't they? So well done to Lisa for another brilliant pick of the day. Say it's coming round to almost a year, if not a year, that Lisa's been on Create and Craft now, and that year has absolutely flown by. Oh, we've got a few more people with us now there. Oh, hi Mum, how are you? Lovely to see you here this afternoon. Okay, so let's make a start then, shall we? This is the card that we have today. As you can see, I've used a combination of stamps and embossing folders, and it's mostly the embossing folders that are the star of this card. You can see here that I've actually isolated and used the sunflowers from the embossing folder here, which is a really unusual way of using the embossing folders, and we've actually seen this embossing folder used this way before. Heidi has done a lovely off the page sort of mixed media piece. Do you remember the glass, is it a jar or a bottle that she created, and she created the sunflowers from a moulding clay, like a polymer clay, an air dry clay, so it looked absolutely fantastic, and I know that she's a big fan of using this embossing folder in this way, so I thought I'd give it a go and just show you just a few tips and tricks, just in case you hadn't actually thought about using the folders this way before. I've also used as a design feature here the basket weave embossing folder at the bottom. I've just used this as a normal sort of rectangle piece of card, but you could obviously shape this into any sort of vessel. The things that spring to mind straight away are Lisa's bottles. Do you remember the bottles? We had the sorry, I can't get my words out today. We have the stamps and the stencils and the dies also as well. So they would actually create a really nice shaped flower vessel for the sunflowers to sit into also. So let's make a start, shall we? I'll just push these off to one side and bring in the folders as we need them. So I've taken myself a piece of card which will sit on top of a card blank, either on the white one. I may even mount it onto a craft one afterwards. I'll see what it looks like. But this is the base as to what I'll be starting with, and what I've done is taken a piece of Lisa's Pretty Petals design paper. it's actually the other half of the sheet that I've used on the main card here. Fortunately, all of Lisa's paper pads, not all of them, the majority of Lisa's paper pads come in a 6x6 inch square pack, which is really great size to work with the embossing folders with. And I've just taken one of the pieces which has got the crackle distress look on one side in this lovely sort of straw colour, but it's also got the flower effect on the other side. And I think what I might do this time is actually use the piece of paper this way round, and what this does actually shows that you can use the debossed image or the reverse of the embossed image, which is just as decorative and just as usable, but also shows that you can actually emboss pattern paper also. You don't always have to emboss onto a plain cardstock or piece of paper. So I think that's just really interesting. So we'll use the embossing this way round. You'll see also here that I've taken on my sheet this time around, I've actually stenciled some clouds in blue ink on the background, which is something that I didn't do on this card. You know what I always like to have a little fiddle around and sort of do things a little bit differently. We never make things the same way. And to make these clouds, I've taken the edge cuts, the essential edges, the dies from Lisa, and I've taken this really, that really wavy one? Either one would work, but I've taken the die, and I've just a spare piece of card or copy paper, it doesn't matter, and I've just die cut that edge like so. So we actually have a stencil, as it were. I mean, it's really, so we can use this to use some ink. For this ink I've used tumbled glass, and I'll just add a few more clouds in, and it's just really light application of the ink. So we start off on the stencil and we just work our way onto the cardstock. We don't want to build up too much of a colour, because obviously that would be too overpowering, but just add a tiny bit of ink and just keep building that up, and just once you've blotted off the main of the ink onto the stencil, just start wiping that from the stencil onto the main cardstock and just building up those fluffy billowy clouds in the background there, and that will just give us a slight bit of a background. You can you see that on the screen there? Yes, you can. If I just hold that up a little bit higher there, we've just got really subtle background, and by the time we've built this up and we have the sunflowers in the front, this will look like it's design paper also. So we can add our, I should do that now, we can add our embossed pattern paper onto the front of that, if my glue wants to play today. I think it's nearly time I get a new bottle, I think. Let's just add that. Now, there we are. So we can leave that to set while we're working on the next stage there. Line that up to the bottom. Okay. I must remember not to put my head into shot too much this week. I think I got out of practice over Christmas, and last week I think you saw more of my head than the demo, so apologies for that. Actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn that around, because I think this edge lines up better with the bottom of the card. Yes, it does. There we are. Okie doke. So next we come on to the sunflowers. Now I shall bring in the embossing folder here, and you can see that what I've done, I've actually embossed a piece of card, and I've isolated and fussy cut the sunflowers out of that. Now this is a really lovely technique to do if you just have scraps of card, of which I can't find my scraps. Where did I put that? Sorry about that, I left my paper across the other side. So with this, what you can do, you can either emboss a full sheet, so you have the full 6x6 piece of embossed sunflowers, and then you can fussy cut out each of the sunflowers. Obviously, depending on the design that you're doing, if you need just the half sunflowers, which this design gives you, then that would be absolutely perfect. If you are wanting to have the full sunflowers on your design, or you want to have the option and the flexibility to have the full sunflowers and then perhaps cut them down to size later, it's actually a really good idea just to emboss small sections of card like this and run this through the embossing machine like so. That way you're not having or wasting too much card on areas that you won't actually be using. So this is all I've done. I embossed the sunflower onto a small piece like this, and then sat and fussy cut those out, so we have those there. Now I've cut these from Lisa's Super Smooth cardstock. You could equally do them out of mixed media card or watercolour card. I think it all really does depend on how you want to colour these. Now I wanted to colour these with Copics, so this reason why I used the Super Smooth card. So I'll just go through, and this is how you can actually start isolating and picking out the details of these sunflowers and actually make them look more like embellishments as opposed to details that you cut from an embossing folder. So now that we say we have these isolated images, we can actually make them start looking like more of a really nice stamped detail. So I'm just using Copic markers here, and I'm just blending away and using yellow just for the centre of the flowers there. So the colours that I've used in this instance are Y00, Y13 and Y18. So that's barium yellow, lemon yellow and lightning yellow. Now I actually got these in a pack that was sort of blended. That's so I know that that was a really nice combination. So the next thing to do, I mean, that in itself would be ideal and look fabulous as it is, but I wanted to add a little bit more detail, and to do that I suppose I wanted to make them look more like daisies as opposed to sunflowers. So I've actually gone in and used some grey to add some just really subtle highlights. And when you actually look at what you've cut out here in the sort of the relief of the flower, so you have some of the petals that are raised and you have some that sit in back. So the ones that are actually sort of sitting behind the main petals, as it were, I'm actually going through and adding the lightest of the grey just to add a tiny bit more shadow to them. Now, because the nature of the embossing folder, they have an amazing amount of detail and they create their own shadows beautifully anyway, just because of the depth of the emboss. But it's actually quite nice to highlight that fact. So with a really pale grey, which is N0, which is a neutral grey, I'm just going in, I just highlighted those sort of deeper embosses, and now I'm just going through, as you can see, just around and adding a tiny bit more shadow just around the centre of the flower there. Now I shall come in with the next shade of grey, which is N2, which is another neutral grey, and it's from the neutral grey set actually, so neutral grey number 2. Now this is a new pen, so if you bear with me, I'm just going to have to make sure that it isn't too juicy, because when I was colouring these initially, the ink did flood, and I was actually able to sort of disguise that and hide that. But what I'm doing now, I'm just adding less detail, and on the raised petals I'm just adding a little bit of detail as we go around there, and that just, as the alcohol ink dries, it does actually dry a lot paler. So these details really do blend and look quite subtle in the background. So we're actually getting some nice shading in there. If you found that you've gone in a little bit too heavy, just come back in with the paler of the greys, and you can just blend those out. So you can really have some fun with this. As I say, I wanted these to have a more of a daisy look as opposed to a sunflower this time. If I were to colour these as sunflowers, I would do exactly the same, but obviously change the colours. You could always sort of colour them to look like chrysanthemums, so you can really go to town and really get some lovely colours. And you can see we've got some really sort of nice highlighted detail on there. The last little bit of detail I just want to add is I just want to come back in with the palest of the yellows again, and just on the main petals, just one stroke on each side of this pale yellow. It just ties in the centre of the flower with the petals quite nicely. And I love this combination of grey and lemon. Anyway, I think it works just so well, and it's just really nice and bright and cheerful. So I hope that's really coming out for you on screen. Oh, hi Kathy, it's nice to see you here. Oh, Natalia's joined us as well. And June. Thanks for coming this afternoon. It's lovely. It's nice to actually craft along with someone. Let's say it's a quiet household here otherwise, which is lovely to craft in, but it's nice to have people join me. So we can see now that we've actually created those flowers, and we can start arranging those sort of tuck behind the wall and add them into place like so. Now one of these flowers here I've already added the 3D foam, so that's ready to be placed in the front. Now one of these flowers, because it's this glue today, I've already unblocked this, but it's, I think because it's getting low, it blocks quite easily again. Okay, so one of these flowers I'll actually want to be tucking behind the wall, because I need to keep a little space for the sentiment in the front. So when I stuck the embossed wool down, I made sure that I'd actually have some space to tuck the flower in behind. So we can do that like so, and then I can add some glue and add this one about there. Now before I add the last one, I want to stamp and emboss the sentiment and add that on, because I want to make sure I rearrange it, or arrange the sentiment and the flower so that you can still see the two. Okay, so I'm taking the sentiment, and I should just bring the set into shot here from this stamp set. So we're using the double layered sentiments, which are an absolute winner. I love these sentiments. I love the size of them, and I love the fact that at least when you actually die cut them, because you have the stamps and the dies together, it's a companion set. I love the fact that the dies cut very close to the sentiment and the wording, and then you can create your layer behind, so then you're able to theme your sentiment to your card really perfectly. So I'm just going to stamp this in a clear embossing ink, because I want to emboss this with the gold powder. So I'll just make sure that I really stamp that well, so that's all taken. Now what I did forget to do is to wipe this card with the anti-static pad, but I think it should be fine. And I think once you can see there, oh yes, I should have actually wiped that. That's fine. Okay, what I'll do, that's because I was being too hasty. What I'll do, I shall stamp it on this one, and I shall bring in my anti-static. I can, what have I done with the stamp? It's up there. So we'll just re-ink that stamp and we'll stamp that again so we get a really nice clean image, because we need to be able to do these stamps the justice that they deserve, I think. So let me just move this out of the way. I'll just stamp this again for a second time. Okay. And Lisa's stamps always stamp so well. As I say, it was just my error not using the anti-static pad. Okay, so that's stamped again, so let's add the embossing powder. This should be a lot cleaner. There we are. That's worked much better, so I should put my heat tool on. Now, I don't usually actually emboss on camera, but I didn't have one already prepared, so it shouldn't actually take too long to actually heat emboss this also. I think what it might do, if it gives me a chance to bring these stamps in again, let's say we have 6 sentiments in this set. I'm using the happy birthday, wishing you a happy birthday. But there's some really lovely generic ones there also, which you can be used for any occasion. If you can see now here that embossing powder is actually turning, and that's still one of the greatest mysteries, I suppose, to me in the craft, and it's something that still fascinates anyone who's crafted for years. So there we are, that's turned. And if I just move that into the light there, you can actually see the shine we have on that embossing powder. So if I just move these back. What I need to do now is actually die cut this sentiment. So I've just taken the dies from the packet here. This is the die set that goes with the sentiment, and I want to use the inner of the dies to actually cut the sentiment. Each of the sentiments has a pair of dies associated with it. The inner die cuts the sentiment, and the outer die cuts the layered area for the outside. I've already cut that, so actually it's nice to be able to show you this from start to finish. I mean, quite often we get these things prepared, but sometimes it's just nice to see things actually working from start to finish. I think it can actually give you the confidence that they are so easy to use. So that's perfect, and I like also the fact that these are small enough to run through my desktop embossing machine, whether that was more luck than judgment from Lisa, of course. But that, say, for me is a deal breaker as to whether, you know, how much I'd use them and to how much I'd reach for them. Okay, so I'll bring in this layer, which I've already cut. So I have some gold mirror card. So that now just elevates this sentiment to something really, really special. And we can stick those on there, like so. And you can see what I was saying before, we have no wasted space here, so purely all you're seeing is the sentiment. And I love the fact that Lisa has designed it so that the die cuts as close to the wording as it actually does. So now you can see that when we place the sentiment on there, it actually takes up quite a lot of the space, but it is quite essential to know where the sentiment sits in relation to where the sunflower will be, or so the daisy actually will be placed. So let me just put this into place like so. This of course could also be raised onto 3D foam as well if you wanted. It would be quite a nice feature to do it that way. So we just take off the backing from the foam here, and I shall just use the gaps in the petals there to place them strategically so we don't cover our words too much. Obviously we need to see the sentiment on a card, and I just really like that layered effect with the three daisies there, like so. And I think this time with the a bit more colour in the background, and we have the clouds in the background also, I think that sort of really pulled together that card quite nicely. And I think that would actually work on either the craft, which really brings out the gold, and I think also it would work on the white as well. It depends what look you was going for, and I think that really makes the blue from the background pop. So I won't stick that down just yet. I shall do that and then photograph it and put it into the group later once I've made up my mind. What do you think? Perhaps it's best on the craft or the white? I shall go with the majority vote because I'll be quite indecisive and not quite sure. But I think it's a really nice card that comes together so quick, and there's so many different colour combinations that it would work quite nicely with that, I think. And it's just a really nice way to use a couple of your embossing folders also. There is another embossing folder which is a wall effect. I can't remember what it's called. Oh, the brickwork, which I think would also work just as well. So that would be a really nice alternative to use also. Let's see. Oh, everybody's going for the craft card. Yes, I think you could be right. I think I might actually stick that on the craft card. There we are. I knew you'd help me make a decision. Okay, so that's come together really nicely today actually. It's amazing how different you can make the two cards look just by using the different colours. I mean, they are arranged in exactly the same way. And actually looking on screen, the grey shading on the flowers, but comes out really well actually, doesn't it? So perfect, thank you for that. I shall photograph that and I shall pop that into the group a bit later on also. Okay. Oh, hi Tina. Oh, it's nice to see Tina in the group with us. Tina's another member of our design team. There's a few of us here this afternoon also. It's lovely to have all your company actually, really nice. Really nice. Okay, so I think I might leave that with you there today. I shall see you again next Tuesday. I haven't got anything prepared just yet, but if there's anything that you'd like to see us use, or if you have any ideas for us for the lives, then we're more than happy to accommodate that also. If not, then I'm sure I'll come up with something, perhaps something stamped. I haven't done any stamping for a little while, so but as I say, as long as we are actually bringing to you the demos and the ideas that you'd like to see, then that's perfect. But I shall leave that with you this afternoon, and I shall get this video all sorted and up on our YouTube channel too. So have a lovely afternoon everybody, and we'll see you again next week. Thanks for joining me. Bye.